in from different parts of the globe. Masaya kami na kasama namin kayo. So this is, like I said, our pilot episode for 2023. I am Attorney Richelle, but you can call me Chill, and I will facilitate our very interesting and exciting conversation tonight in our ISIP ISAK conversations on faith and society. So to those who are first timers here, we would like to let you know that ISIP ISAK is brought to you by the Institute of Studies for Asian Church and Culture, or known as ISAK. We are a faith-based organization that seeks to make an impact in our communities. And we do it by being a research center, a training hub, or having conversations such as this and inviting people from all walks of life, from different ages. Whoever you are, whatever you do, you are free. Pwedeng-pwede po kayo na sumali sa ating conversation now online. So, we'd like to encourage you to share our live conversation tonight. And abangan nyo pa po ang mga susunod namin na ilalabas para po mas marami tayo na marating at maabot sa conversations natin. And we do this so that we can be better equipped to serve our communities and be creative witnesses to the Lordship of Jesus. So if you want to know more about ISAK, you can also visit our website at isaac.global, or you can even message us or leave a comment. Of course, after our conversation, we would like to reach out to you also so that we can share more about what ISAC is doing. So if you are online, we would like to invite you to feel free to comment in the chat box. Give us a react. So pwede ba namin malaman kung saan kayo sumasali sa amin ngayong gabi? You can type there where you are, or you can say hello to your friends who are joining us. So I can see a number of us here. Ayan, I can see us online. So feel free to share this to your family and friends. Exciting po ang pag-uusapan natin ngayong gabi. So huwag kayong mahiya na mag-comment dito, okay ba? So we are also excited to hear from you. You can ask questions. You can also hop in the conversation, and as much as we can, we would also try to mention you perhaps, or kung ayaw nyo naman, baka mamaya mahiya kayo, that's fine. But what we really aim is for all of us to enjoy our conversation. I know we are all excited to dive deep into our conversation, which I am sure in one way or another, you can all relate. So our theme for the first episode of ISIP ISAK is all about reinventing the self. Tamang-tama sa bagong taon. Reinventing the self, new year, new wineskins. Marami sa atin dito, maraming pagbabagong naranasan nitong nakaraang 2 taon, and nitong 2023, sigurado ako patuloy pa rin yung mga changes and transitions that we are all experiencing. We can also say that the Lord allowed it. And this pushed us to reinvent ourselves, our ways, or our perspectives. And we can also be experiencing these changes in various contexts, some personal, no? Marami dyan, maraming pagbabago sa sarili na natuklasan. Marami rin dito, maybe organizationally, if you are part of an organization, marami galing dito sa planning. Tama ba? So pwede kayong mag-agree. You can say, oh, kakatapos nga lang ng planning namin sa organization namin to revisit our vision, mission, or the way we do things. Or even as a church, you know, we want to really be relevant to our churches and communities. And so we always ask the Lord how we can be effective witnesses and ministers to the society, and even to, of course, our brothers and sisters. So we are really reinventing ourselves, especially in these changing and evolving times. Sabi nga natin, new normal, quote unquote. But we can ask this 2023, as we begin this year, were we really able to adjust and transition? And if yes, how do these changes or these new things look like? So are you guys ready to dive in our conversation about reinventing the self? New year, new wineskin? Hindi lang po ako ang makakasama nyo ngayong gabi, because I will be joined by 3 Isaac folks who will share from their personal experiences. And I'm certain that we will be able to get insights from them about our theme for tonight. So simulan na natin. Do you want to get to know them now? Sige. So let me introduce to you first. Sige. Ang aking panyera. Sabi nga nila, yung kapwa ko abogado. Pero ang abogadong ito ay napakabait na alam ko marami sa inyo maraming matututunan sa kanya. She's a lawyer who practices labor, maritime and corporate law, and she works to advance public policy in shipping and seafaring. She's also very much interested in theology, psychology, and current events. So I'd like to introduce to you and let's welcome guys. Sige. Feel free to give her a shout out if you're one of her friends. So let me call on, let us welcome Attorney Zara D.
Hi, Chel. Good evening, and good evening to everyone who is tuning in for the first episode of ISIP ISAK of 2023.
Yan. Hello, Attorney Zara. You like to also give some shout out to maybe some friends watching? Meron ka bang
Well, I'd like to say hello to GCF Makati if they're watching, and also our ladies at Twig. Hello, Naji and friends.
Ayan, okay. So, sana kasama natin sila. I think I can see some reacts in our online Facebook. So, I'm now with Attorney Zara and joining us is also another millennial, no? Zara, millennial pa tayo, tama?
Yeah,
So, another
nakasali pa.
Yeah, another millennial. He's an entrepreneur serving people and communities through his mobile cafe. Before that, he served as missions pastor in a local church, and he also continues to serve in different organizations such as ISAK, Micah, and many others as part of Board of Trustees and as a volunteer. So Zara, let's call on our friend Pastor Ian De Ocampo. Let's welcome him.
Hello, everyone. Good evening and Happy New Year. I'm excited for our conversation tonight. Yeah.
Meron ka bang gustong i-shout out like Zara?
Hello sa lahat. To all our whoever's listening, friends
Yeah.
and other colleagues also.
Alright. So, ayan. So, tatlo na tayo. So, itong susunod na kasama natin, no? To our online viewers and listeners. So, kapwa millennial din po namin ito. In heart, to, di ba? Sa puso, nako, yung love niya for pizza and tama po ba, crispy pata? Nako, mas matindi pa yata sa amin. But we don't need any so much kasi sigurado ako kilala niyo siya, but I'd like to briefly introduce her as the founder and president emeritus of ISAK. She is of course a world-renowned social anthropologist, theologian and writer. So without any further introduction, a lot of you would probably have read her published works. So let us welcome Dr. Melba Magay. Hi, Dr. Melba. Please give a shout out to our
Salamat,
viewers and
Tricia.
listeners.
Good evening sa lahat ng millennial. I think
Yan.
it's a good time to think, no? For all of us, whether millennial or millennial, kung ano po yung mga dapat ma-reinvent sa ating mga sarili.
Right. So we're excited, Dr. Melba, for the things that you will be sharing. Dr. Melba, Ian, and Zara, let's just give it some shout out and maybe let's welcome those who are joining us online. We have Oms Kunanan, who's watching from Bataan. So hello, Oms. Thank you for joining us tonight in ISIP ISAK. We also have ito, Ro Christine Queenie, and she's giving a shout out. Hi, Kuya Ian, sabi niya.
Hello.
So, ayan, feel free again to our online friends to share this live conversation to your family, to your colleagues maybe. Even after this conversation, patuloy nyo lang itong i-share and yung mga kasama namin ngayong gabi, inaanyayahan namin kayo na sumali sa conversation natin. So just chat in the chat or comment box. So wag kayong mahihiya because this conversation is for all of us. It is really our one of our goals for us to be encouraged in reflecting and having this collective discussion. I'm sure the Lord can speak to us as He leads us to discern together. So, babati pa ako, no, muna. Dr. Melba, Ian, and Zara, alam ko excited na rin kayo sa conversation natin. Pero mas marami pang sumasali sa atin ngayon. Ito, we have Rafael Gatdula watching from Bulacan. Hello, Raf. Of course, John Daniel Rotap watching from Clark. So, hello sa inyo and thank you for joining us. They are my churchmates. I'm so happy to have you here. So, ayan. So, sige, umpisahan na natin to. Marami pang hahabol pero simulan na natin yung kwentuhan at usapan natin. We really are excited to hear your personal experiences, no? Pastor Ian, Atty. Zara, and Dr. Melba. So we are talking about reinventing the self. New year, new wineskin. Hindi lang naman kasi dahil bagong taon, pero mamaya gusto kong malaman gaano ba talaga nga dapat natin nire-reinvent yung sarili natin or kailangan ba yun. But let us first talk about our theme or title. We said new wineskin. So what is this new wineskin concept? Where did it come from? And what does it apply maybe for you? How does it apply to these different aspects or areas? We'd like to focus on the area of the self or personal, of course, organizationally, not only because we're ISAK as an organization. I'm sure a lot of organizations or members of different organizations are also joining, and of course as a church. So for our grounding, what is this new wineskin? Let me ask first siguro si Dr. Melba, no. Dr. Melba, what can you say about new wineskin?
Well, galing sa Bible yan eh. Yung Matthew 9 and also sa Luke chapter 5, Matthew and Mark chapter 2. All the three synoptic gospels, merong silang version nito. Ang punot dulo lang nito is that yung mga disciples ni John as well as yung mga Pharisees, tingin nila, bakit itong mga disipulo ni Jesus, they do not behave, they do not fast, no? Kagaya nila, no? So sabi ni Jesus, well, bakit silang magpa-fast? The bridegroom is here. Ibig sabihin, he is inaugurating a new era, no? With the coming of his person. So, hindi na pwede yung mga old ways of relating to God or yung old ideas of being holy, no? Na fasting, ganyan-ganyan. Sabi niya, there will be a time when they will fast when the bridegroom is taken away from them. Pero, sabi niya, ang kailangan is that you fit, you know, yung unshrunk na cloth, hindi mo pwedeng ilagay doon sa old. Yung new wine, hindi pwedeng ilagay sa old na wineskins. Kasi yun daw, bagong wine, no, will burst the old wineskins at pareho silang sayang. And he was saying na actually, siguro ang buod nun is it should fit the times. Ano man ang ating gagawin, ano mang mga rituals, ano mang mga sistema, we should always discern anong context natin ngayon. Kagaya ni Jesus, sabi niya, you are in a new era. Hindi na pwede yung mga old na mga ritualistic practices, no? Even if they may be useful, merong time and occasion for them. But this is not an occasion for that, sabi niya. Hindi ito time for fasting. This is a time for feasting. So, he was running around with publicans and sinners. So, kailangan siguro tayo rin, lalo sa simbahan, na di-discern natin, ano itong panahon na ito? At ano yung angkop na wineskin para dito? Na hindi na pwede yung mga old ways of doing things. Old ways of being church, old ways of being an organization, old ways of being ourselves, no? Kagaya kaming mga senior, madali na we just like to perpetuate aming mga old routines because we are used to that, no? Sabi nga ni Jesus, nobody likes new wine. Gusto natin old wine. Why? Because you are used to it. Na-routinize mo na yung buhay mo Ayaw mo nang lumabas do'n, 'no? Lalo kung matanda ka na, kagaya namin, yung mga millennial, ayaw nang mag-change ng habits kasi we have routinized and have a modicum of stability sa buhay namin. So why will we change? And usually, lahat tayo in a way conservative psychologically. Pag may bago, medyo suspicious tayo. Ay, ayoko niyan because it will, you know, mean new routines, new habits. Mahirap na yun para sa mga seniors, no? And I think kahit lang sa mga matatanda or bata, pareho yun eh.
Okay. All right. Wow. Thank you for giving us a context of what New Wineskin is all about, referencing from the Bible in siguro dun sa sinabi ni Dr. Ramel ba, hindi na pwede yung old ways or old ideas in application to what the Bible
Nawawala.
perspective or appreciation or understanding of New Wineskin. Attorney Zara, Pastor Ian, sige, Attorney Zara, what are your thoughts about New Wineskin?
Yeah. I appreciated the illustration. Tapos hinanap ko talaga, ano ba talaga yung wine skin na yan? And yung wine skin, parang ancient type of bottle made out of animal skin. And that's where they put the grapes, which they want to ferment and turn into wine. Now, if the wine skin, if that skin, the leather is old, then it's a little tough and hard and more prone to burst or crack. Now, if you put new wine, which is still fermenting, in the fermentation process, di ba, parang there are gases that will uh, come out. And because of those gases, the skin expands and expands and expands until that old wine skin will break. So, mawi-waste yung wine, and then the wine skin is broken pa. And I love that illustration because it parang well at that time Jesus was trying to illustrate that you can't mix old religious rituals with new faith in him, no? But for us, if we take that and for our purposes tonight, I think with the self naman, parang there are certain new things, maybe personal habits or new ways of living that we've come to that cannot be maintained or made to grow in old environments or in old modes of thinking. And so it's a nice way to look at it that at a certain point when the context of our lives change, we need to be able to move out of the old and into the new. Otherwise, maybe we won't be able to preserve anything, nothing of the old and even nothing of the new. So it's a very nice illustration. Um, Pastor Ian, do you have anything to say to that?
Yeah. Tell us your thoughts. Share your thoughts with us, Pastor Ian.
Well, yes, of course. We are in a fast paced changing world. Ang daming nangyayari na bago, and but the work remains the same, ano, yung what we do as Christians, as followers of Jesus, is about gospel witness and transformation, ano, in all areas of our lives, no. But the thing is, the way we do these things, the way we express being witnesses of Jesus, uh, may be also misunderstood now, or um, na in different expressed differently now in this time and age. We are encountering issues and opportunities that we have never encountered before sa digital age, false truths, that and so many available narratives online. We can pick and choose, na parang grocery store ang online ng ano ang internet ng mga things that we may want to believe. And And so the way we do things now will have to be very different. The way we express church, the way we express our faith is changing. There are digital ways to express your faith. In fact, no. So wineskins has always changed for every generation, for the church especially. In fact, sa church, it has always been dynamic. It has always been changing throughout history. We have churches in the forms of yung sa Acts Church, yung Roman Empire na church, yung Middle Ages, yung very key, maalala natin yung Reformation siguro kasi as evangelicals, we celebrate it more in the modern church now. And churches are so diverse, and there are many ways to express and there are many kinds of wineskins, many kinds of expressions ng ating church today. And that's why you even have the Asian church, African church, Latin American church. All these are different ways we do we express our faith, and we express our community. So in all these contexts, and yung church, pareho naman sila lahat, gospel witness, no, of Jesus Christ. Pero iba-iba yung wineskin nila that they are in, and they are like ano, kasi yung context ng mga yon, yung mga structures that and the societies that they are in are uh, ex expressing faith in their local culture. So that's very important to note. And so ngayon meron na tayong digital na ways and other physical na new ways na face-to-face. And marami pang exciting na makita in the future, the future church.
Wow, ang laman, grabe, no? So to our viewers, siguro for all of us, even those joining us in the conversation, for all of us to be in the same grounding, kasi we're talking about, again, reinventing the self, new year, new wineskin. So kanina, Dr. Melba shared that our ways of doing things should fit the times. Zara, on a personal level, sabi mo kanina, you have to move out of the old and into the new. So, sa mga nanonood sa amin dyan, baka yan ang inyong quotable quote for the year 2023. Move out of the old and into the new. But seriously speaking, oo nga, no? When you talk about new wineskin, that's also about that. You move out of the old and into the new. And there are habits, new habits na we hope we would have, pero hindi na siya pwede sa old environment. Otherwise, we can't preserve. That's what Zara shared with us earlier. Si Pastor Ian naman, so rich na sharing about the church, the local, there are different or many expressions of faith in local churches, but all in the same mission or with the same mission, which is to for the gospel witness of Jesus. But we have to have that recognition that there may be really different expressions of our faith, our love for God, but all with one purpose and mission. So I think we will dive deeper into that later. So sa mga kasama po namin online, what are your thoughts? Can you resonate so far with what we are sharing? Sa mga nabahagi namin, pwede niyong sabihin, para sa inyo, ano yung equivalent ba ng new wineskin? Ano yung mga bagong bagay na nararanasan nyo? Feel free to share it with us in the comments. Bati lang tayo ng ilan natin mga kasama before we go on to the next discussion natin, no, bago tayo lumalim. Maraming nanonood or sumasali sa atin. Si JD Salud watching from Malabon. We also have Veronica Mendoza who shared and said that she's happy to note that ISIP ISAK is back. We are also happy to be here again sa ating bagong brand of ISIP ISAK, new perspectives and new friends we hope will be joining us. So ituloy natin yung discussions or yung kwentuhan natin, Dr. Melba, Pastor Ian, and Attorney Zara, and of course everyone here. So let's narrow down to the areas of the self, the individual or the personal level, the organizations that we are part of, and of course the church. For you guys, sa inyo po, Pastor Ian, Attorney Zara, and Dr. Melba, in your personal experience this past period of time, what areas did you feel needed reinventing and why? Do you feel that way na kailangan ko na tong i-reinvent? Otherwise, I will burst. Parang ganon. Or the new things are gonna burst, di ba? So in that sort of analogy. So in the area of, let's start with self muna, di ba? So sarili muna. So Attorney Zara, in the area of self, maybe personal, you can share to us personal things as much as you want, na makaka-relate yung mga tao na kasama natin ngayon. What area in your life or in the self did you feel needed reinventing and why?
All right. Well, first, no, let me define reinventing. So, what does that mean? Well, we keep hearing about it. We need to reinvent ourselves, reinvent the idea. Don't reinvent the wheel. So it means that you need to change something so much that it appears entirely new, or you take up a very different job or way of life, or if you're reinventing yourself, it means you identify patterns or values or activities that no longer serve you, and then you change them and move on to better options. And so I was thinking about this, and it only dawned on me, I think, after over 2 years of the pandemic, that what came into focus was consumption. And I needed to rethink and reinvent how I consume. And I don't know about everybody else listening, no? Kayo guys, napansin niyo ba sarili niyo nung pandemic, especially during the time when nasa bahay lang tayo, tapos hindi pwedeng lumabas under quarantine restrictions. What happened, di ba? Nagsilaguan yung dalgona coffee, ube pandesal. Di ba, Chill? Ano bang mga recipe na nasubukan mo doon?
Marami. Wow. Pero that's true. That's true.
And so our focus, our energy, all of a sudden had such a small environment to focus on, and we were on our screens, working, communicating, going to church, fellowshipping, and then we were, maybe with our families, but like me, I lived alone. I was in the kitchen, cooking, eating, and I did not pay much attention to my consumption of both food and also of what consumed my attention. And I only realized it 2 years later. Number one, the weighing scale doesn't lie. So I gained some pounds, and it was quite astounding. But also, I noticed my attention. I used to be a person who could like focus. I can read a book and read it straight for maybe 2, 3 hours. After the pandemic, or even during, I noticed like my attention would flit, and I'd have a hard time concentrating on maybe listening to something or reading or writing. I couldn't write anymore. And I realized that parang na-hijack yung senses ko. Alam mo yun, na parang may nag-override. And so last year, I started reading, read up on certain books on food. And also, I read this book on attention. It was called Stolen Focus. And I realized that so many things were happening. We didn't know it because we were so consumed by the pandemic. But if iisipin talaga natin, no, yung gaano kalaki nag-explode yung internet. Nandun na siya, di ba? Pero unti-unti lang, progressive lang yung pag-onboard ng buhay natin sa internet. Pero dahil sa pandemic, talagang doon na tayo namuhay. And biglang na culture shock yung sarili ko na, ay hala, ito pala yung nangyari and I don't like it. And I don't think it's an isolated experience. And I realized that, it was consumption. And towards the end of last year, I realized that I needed to reinvent what I thought about what I consumed, both physically, in terms of what I put inside my body, and also with my attention, what I put inside my mind, what I listen to, what I keep in my heart. And Yun yung dalawang bagay na talagang ano siya challenge siya eh. Tapos yung sinabi ko na, alam mo yung mga bagong habits, ako parang towards the end of the year, I decided stop eating meat. I read the book about it, no? And that's a whole different discussion. But I read the book about it. I can feel the good effects of it. It's been a month to today. But you see, that habit would not survive or thrive with my old ways of thinking that, oh, I'll just have a slice of this. I'll just have some pasta. Or I'll just have a slice of bread. I love bread. So I needed to change yung pag-iisip na I've always liked this eh. Hindi mabubuhay yung panibago nating gustong mabuhay kung nandun tayo sa nakaraan. Kaya ano siya, iba rin yung experience. Pero yun yung dalawang bagay na I needed to rethink and then reinvent.
Yeah. I noticed, no, kay Attorney Zara, maybe Doc Melba and si Ian could also include it in their answers later. Pero parang at first, tama ba, Zara? At first you realized na, ganito na pala, like consumption, it wasn't really a good thing at first. When you realize na, like, ito na pala yung dami or yung, sabi mo nga, you really that indulged in a way nung time na yon with food or even your
Yeah,
education because wala internet, digital, at first na-enjoy natin, pero you came to a point when you realize, teka lang, there must be a change, otherwise, it's really gonna go wrong. Parang
yeah.
ganun. Oh, so that's,
It was an escape and then it was a means to self-soothe,
yeah,
right?
great.
Because you thought that, well, hey, it's an exception to the rule because we're under unprecedented times, so might as well, right? But then you keep doing that, you realize, wait a minute, this is turning into a habit that is it's destructive.
Yeah, okay. Maybe some of our viewers or audience could also relate to that. How about, sige, shift tayo. So that's all about the self, what Attorney Zara shared. So what about in terms of, siguro sa organization, we introduced you earlier, Dr. Melba, as the President Emeritus of ISAK, the founder of ISAK. Meron din po ba kayong parang similar pivotal point, parang si Zara kanina na, oh, teka lang parang I needed reinventing already. And in the area of the organization, like ISAC maybe, or other organizations where you are part of, what area specifically needed reinventing for you, Dr. Melba? Maybe those who have organizations,
Well,
peer leading organizations, would like to know also what you've experienced.
well, actually, kagaya ni Sarah, nung panahon ng pandemic, no? It was a good time kasi you begin to come face to face with what, what is in you and what is important. Um, Ako, halimbawa, I think na-addict ako sa Netflix, no? Kasi nga,
Ano ba yun?
you're living in a small world na. So, mahilig ako sa Netflix until sabi ng Lord sa akin, oy, sobra na yan Netflix mo. But at the same time, I also realized the reason I enjoy it is because there is a repressed part of me, yung creative, artistic part of me, na medyo na-repress ng kaunti because I have to do management, no? Yung I have to do fund sourcing, I have to orchestrate yung mga organizational na outputs, yung mga ganun-ganun. I suddenly realized, ayoko na to, no? Ayoko na. And I want to nurture yung creative part of me na hindi lumalabas masyado. All these years, dahil nga sa, although it's true na nagsusulat ako, it's true na, like last year, I have been able to produce a novel na 10 years in the making. Matagal nang tinatanong ni Sionel Jose sa akin, how is your novel? Medyo na-embarrass na ako. Until, of course, no, natapos ko at least bago siya namatay. But, na-realize ko bigla, ito ang gusto kong tahakin, no? I want to go back to my right brain, be creative. Isang gift kasi ng retiring from all of these things organizationally is I can take my coffee break anytime I want. In other words, hindi ka constrained masyado, no? In boxes, ganyan. And this is the gift of, living very, in a way, very exhausting na job to something else, no? Which has always been there naman sa akin. Pero happy ako na I finally said yes to myself, no? Ayoko na to. I think I've done 44 years of being the tribal chief dito sa ISAK. And I felt, siguro, what many leaders also feel, no, na, well, it's time to move on and have a new generation. Kasi unless you create that vacuum, people will not step up sa totoo lang. They're too much in your shadow. And I'm saying this sa mga founders ng organizations. Yung mga susunod, they always feel, very giant yung shoes. I cannot feel it. That's not true. Kasi new times, new contexts require new people. Simple lang yon. And no matter how competent, sa totoo lang, we get obsolete, no? I think ako, I have begun to really realize na kung ano yung sinasabi ng passage ng wineskins. Ang gospel is always new wine. Hindi yan naluluma eh. Ang gospel is always new. Hindi yan naluluma through all time and eternity. Pero ang wineskins always get old. While the gospel is always new wine, yung wineskins are always getting old. And kahit na papano, we tend to confuse the things of God with God Himself. Kaya minsan, yung things of God like church, like the institutions we build, the organizations, enterprises that we build, lahat yan, always getting old. No? Wineskins lang lahat yan eh. But ang problema minsan, we hang on to them. As if sila yung actual na transcendent God. Hindi eh. They're always getting old. I I remember when I was quite young, millennial, kagaya ninyo. Punta ako sa England first time. And noon, debate sa churches yung pag-retire ng prayer book, yung Anglican na prayer book. And that's a very nice kasi English major ako. So gusto ko yung cadence niya, gusto ko yung sound, no? Kaya lang sabi sa akin ng mga British mismo, yung mga teenager nila, hindi na naintindihan yung Book of Common Prayer, yung mga ganyan. So kailangan i-retire. So in other words, even good things, things of God, that God has used, kailangan i-retire because they're getting old. They're getting old. They don't speak na anymore sa susunod na generation. And I think that's true with people also. I remember si McLuhan during the 60s, yung media theorist na si McLuhan. Sabi niya, if anything works, it is obsolete. Ang ibig niya sabihin, pagka na-perfect mo na yung something, no? Whether it's a system, it's an organizational mission, or ganon-ganon, pag na-perfect mo na yan, and it is no longer able to evolve, no? And able to be improved. Kasi na-perfect na eh. Kasi when we think it's working, you hang on to it, ganon-ganon. Hindi eh. Kasi there will come a time, it will become obsolete. No matter how much it has been used by God. And I think, dapat natin yun eh, palaging iniisip yun eh, na if anything works, it is obsolete. It is true. It is, if you cannot improve on it na, it is on its way to becoming obsolete. Totoo yun eh. Yung wineskins are getting obsolete. Kaya Kaya lang ang problema natin, we confuse yung things of God, no? Yung wineskins, kagaya ng fasting, all these rituals, with God Himself. Hindi naman pareho yun eh.
Right.
The new work of the kingdom is always new. Ang problema, palagi nating hand-on tayo dun sa mga bagay na akala natin because God has used it, then palaging forever. Hindi eh. Nothing is forever
Yeah.
when it comes to wineskins. Gospel lang ang forever.
Gospel lang forever, tama. Baka may mga magtatanong dyan kasi Dr. Melba, you've been saying, retire, retire. Nako, magre-retire ba si Dr. Melba? Pero I'm sure, like you said, kanina you mentioned about parang you enjoyed or you got refreshed dun sa creative side niyo, di ba? Writing. So I'm sure we'll still see more of what you will do and share it with us. So meron dito sa comment, Dr. Melbs, may nag-comment na thank you very much, Ma'am Melba Magay. That's from Ginoong Ver Ramos. Maybe you know him. So, yeah, nag-comment siya. So, Pastor Ian, would you like to add anything to that? Thank you, Dr. Melba, for sharing your insights, what you've experienced in terms of reinventing the self. Ikaw naman, Pastor Ian, anything you'd like to add in the area of the church, maybe, like what you're saying earlier, what needed reinventing and why?
Siguro, I would like to relate it also sa self ko. Before the pandemic, I was uh, I was very driven in terms of like what I wanted to do, um, in ministry, and I think one of the things na natutunan ko before the pandemic, which is parang natutunan ko intellectually, is one pastor said na, of course, we say this all the time. No, you find your identity in Christ, no, and not in anything else, no. So, but sometimes we also find our identity along that na I'm a pastor, ang identity ko is my career, what I have accomplished. But when the pandemic happened, all of that was gone. No, you are left with yourself and with nothing else but your relationship with God. Especially ako, I came from working in a church and then nag-resign ako before the pandemic. And then after that, I wasn't able to do what I wanted to transition to. So everything had to pause and I had to rethink everything. I had to um, reflect and be face to face with God a lot during those times, or maybe and ask a lot of questions, no? And so one of the things is yun nga, yung one important thing to remember in area of our church is yung ano nga ba tayo? Is it about our success, our numbers, or our relationship? No, it's about kasi a lot of the things that we did in church is about yung our measures of success, our policies, ganyan, our strategies, our programs. But all of that was gone during the pandemic. We had to, okay, what are we going to do? No? And it it really showed the value ng church as a community, as a relationship, no, as a community that follows Jesus. And so yeah, one important value I had to recover was God's way of relating to us and how we relate to each other. I learned this from Dr. Magay also. We as the church are not together because of a membership roster or because of a list of policies or traditions. We are a community that is very different. No, we are a community that is centered on a person. We gather around Jesus Christ. And yung relationship natin kay Christ and with each other. A friend of mine always said this, even before the pandemic, you can never programmatize or policize yung relationship. Hindi mo malalagay sa policy yung relationship. It is always, if you want to relate and to be friends with others, you have and be accountable. There has to be love. There has to be trust. there has to be vulnerability, and yun yung strong bonds of relationship, when you invest yourself and sacrifice yourself to serve your neighbor. And that is biblical, no? That is how God showed his love. While we were still sinners, no, Christ died for us. So strategies, plans, and programs are easy actually, and those are good, but those are easy. You don't need to be vulnerable in a church that has a lot of programs or a lot of strategies. But you just need to implement policy. Pero yun nga, we need to go back to
Yeah.
to what is church about. Um, not about preaching 3 or 4 points lang tapos converted na. It's about sacrificing yourself, and that is the more scary part. No, that is the harder part. Investing time to listen, and all these relational um, hardships that we encounter, especially sa mga husband and wife dyan. I'm sure naintindihan niyo yung sacrifice that comes with it.
Mm.
So many today are starved with relationships, and I think that's one way we can think of how we need to go back and or create new wineskins. And that is how I wanted to practice church, and by being a true community, and a true community that is intentional about welcoming all kinds of people in the name of Jesus, no? And that's why we started a cafe, no? So we welcome everyone. It's a public space. Everyone can come in and um, or just visit, and we collaborate with different kinds of businesses. We have a regular community, and that's where they find safe space, no? And that's how we are trying to do it. I wouldn't say it's there and perfect and the best thing to do, but yeah, think of ways to invest in what is true community uh, of Jesus.
Thank you, Pastor Ian, for sharing that. May mga
Siguro,
Carmel ba? Anything you'd like to add?
chill. Siguro just to point out yung sinabi ni Ian a little more na merong gift side yung pandemic eh. We began to discover yung true values. Yung value ng family, value ng friends, value ng relationships in general. Na even if you have all the technology, sa totoo lang, you still long for your friends, for your office workers, no? Yung mga community mo in all of this. And we learn to value what really matters. In other words, yung metrics natin, yung sinasabi ni Ian, you begin to measure what matters most. No? What matters most is really your relationships, yung ganon. And I think yun ang gift side nung pandemic. We began to really value each other in small groups, ganon. Yung need for intimacy, for genuine relationships, we began to value those things. As against, palagi nating naiiwan yun dahil busy tayo sa career or whatever, no? Pero I think it was a good reminder sa Diyos na ultimately, what we should measure should be really what matters most.
I'm thinking po, no, Dr. Melba, Pastor Ian, and Attorney Zara, earlier yung mga realizations and experiences that you shared with us that happened to you during the pandemic. It's been 2 years already, correct? And ngayon, 2023 na. But we're not really going back to the past 2 years only to, alam mo yun, parang, 2 taon na nga yung nakalipas na pandemic. But what I'm realizing now is how it's already um, teaching us if we will really go forward to the new, or are we returning to the old normal? Parang ganon. Kasi the things that you were saying earlier, the values, parang these are things that should have been ingrained in us long ago, but it's only now that we are realizing it. It's only now that we're able to assess if we're really able to apply it. And ngayon, like we said, for example, in the workplace, no, if I can say, di ba, may mga nag-adopt ng hybrid work. Pero the challenge is, do we continue on this kind of setup or do we revert to the old ways of going full blast physical or on-site work? So, hindi rin siya talaga ganun kadali, but we are here at this point where we are reflecting about it and maybe probably most of us who are listening, nakikita nila yung sarili nila na, oo nga no, bumabalik ba ako o umuusad ba ako papunta sa new wineskin? So that's my personal take when you were sharing. So maybe some of our listeners are also able to have that thought.
Eh,
So marami kayong na-share. Sige, meron kayong gustong i-add dun sa point na yun. I have another question for you guys. Marami ring mga nagko-comment dito. Maybe later on I could read some of their comments. But sige, I'll let you add to what I just noted a while ago.
naalala ko lang sa ganyan yung one story that's very significant in scripture is yung Exodus, no, na story na the Israelites were slaves in Egypt and they were liberated
Mm-hmm.
from Egypt, and they had to go through the desert, the wilderness, for 40 years in order to be able to reach the promised land. And I think for me, ang metaphor would be uh, the the wilderness has been very much like the pandemic, where we were doing these traditions. We were enslaved to a lot of traditions, and the pandemic was a wilderness that we had to go through to our new normal, our new ways. But the thing is, a lot of the and I think pinagdadaanan pa rin natin. I'm sure a lot of transitions still. But a lot of the Israelites also during the time were wanting to go back. Hindi nila gusto yung pinagdadaanan nila. Buti pa noon, ah, sa Egypt nakakakain kami. Kahit slaves sila, okay lang sa kanila maging slaves, no? Ah, and but there is something to look forward to. And we don't know that Israelites didn't have like a picture of what Boracay looks like, or what the promised land looks like, Canaan, or where the Lord was leading them to. But it's blurry and it's scary, and sometimes we want to just go back to our old ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
Mm-mm.
Talagang, I think we don't realize na if you want to i-reinvent, no, and move from A to B, meron niyang cost talaga, kagaya ng desert or wilderness experience. Sabi nga ni Veronica, new wineskin could also be getting out of our comfort zones. And that's true. You're getting to something unknown, no? And yung path towards that, napakahirap. Kagaya ng mga Israelites. Walang tubig, walang pagkain, walang kung ano-ano. Um, and it is true that na anything that is worth going into will require a desert experience, a wilderness experience, where you don't know where you are. Ano ba? And it takes a lot of courage, no? Lalo yung mga nag-retire halimbawa, it's very easy to just become vegetables, no? Na mga television na mga vegetable. Uh, but I think it's important to realize na, in fact, this is a new path. This is a new adventure, sabi nga ni Veronica, no? Those of us who are retirees, meron tayong uncertain income na, and we don't really know what lies beyond. And it will not be easy, but it is easy to go back to the old normal and call it the new normal, yung sinasabi ni Ian. No? Kagaya mga Israelites, gusto yung flesh pots ng Egypt, etc. Balik tayo doon. Sometimes what we think is the new normal is really just more of the same.
Mm-hmm.
No? And akala natin normal na yun kasi nga we in the first place we have routinized it before. So we're used to it. Pero it's not going to get you to the promised land if you are not prepared to go through the wilderness experience. where you actually don't know what's going to happen, no? Wala ka na yung usual routines and systems and ganon, and structures. And this is especially true sa mga retirees, no? Kaya sabi sa Amerika daw, marami CEO, in 5 years na mamatay unless they find something to volunteer for. So, um, kailangan we see to it na yung tinatawag natin na new normal is not more of the same.
Right.
Mm.
Baka,
Maybe,
yes.
sorry,
Go ahead, Attorney Zara. Before
maybe to add that
yes.
also, I think apart from making sure it's not more of the same, I think there's a level of intentionality also that hopefully a lot of us would recognize, because the story naman that I was reminded of Gideon when he was called. When he was called, I think we had Israel being surrounded by their enemies, and Gideon, when the angel came, was beating wheat in the wine press. So that's not where he was supposed to be, but he was hiding. And so my concern at this time was actually, what if we get used to making do? What if we get used to hybrid when hybrid may not be the design for our lives? Maybe there are other things that we need to pursue that we are not seeing because we only react with the times. We are not able to be intentional about the things that we want or that we have discerned to be the way forward, or maybe we're not even conscious. So I think on a larger scale, that's another thing that I was thinking about, because it's very difficult to be conscious when your attention is absorbed by all of these other things that are vying for it.
Right.
And so if there's anything that the pandemic has taught me, apart from the buzzword surveillance capitalism, it's that we have so many distractions that if we're not careful, we will lose sight of what the purpose really is of our existence. And so I think there's a level of intentionality.
Right. Let me read some of the comments earlier, no, relating to what we're now talking about. From Oms Kunanan, he said earlier that inevitability to evolve in order to catch our digital area, new wineskin is needed. That's true. Maybe for like si Dr. Melba, tama ba, Doc Melbs? Hindi ko naman kayo binubuko, pero alam ko sa inyo ng mga hindi sanay mag-online before, ngayon nag-online na, di ba? So, and now you keep at it. You continue doing online meetings. Sabi niyo nga, Dr. Melba, mahilig na kayo
Baka
sa
maging obsolete eh.
Oh, 'di ba? And new wineskin is needed even in that area. Sabi ni Veronica Mendoza earlier, she said new wineskin could also be getting out of comfort zone. I think you've mentioned that. One of you mentioned that earlier. And that's where the adventures dwell. It's nice to have that perspective. You see it as an adventure. Earlier, you also mentioned something about the new path. Pero meron din kayong sinabi na desert or wilderness experience. So maybe our listeners, viewers, audience are thinking, do I want to go to that wilderness experience? But well, the story in the Bible showed that they reached the promised land when they remain faithful as God has been faithful to them, di ba? So it's a challenge for all of us, I think, also to continue on this path that we're treading on towards reinventing the self in terms of personal, as a church, as an organization, as a community, di ba? Challenge talaga sa atin yan. And for all of us who are joining, um, I'd like to just say that hindi ka nag-iisa. All of us are experiencing it, going through it. And together, I'm sure we can learn and we can encourage one another. So, marami na tayong naibahagi, no, sa bawat isa. Pero as a last point, I'd like to just probably kahit list or items lang, you can share with us, aside from what you earlier mentioned, to also help our audience in terms of, let's say, sa organization namin, ano ba yung mga new practice or systems na dapat pa namin i-adopt or i-welcome? Apart from what you've already shared earlier, or maybe just to concretize everything. So in the area of the organization, if you're part of an organization or of the church and individually on a personal level, let's give some, tawagin nating tips, sige, tips para makarelate yung mga nakikinig sa atin. What are these new practices or systems that we should all welcome? Let's start with sa organization, Dr. Melba, and then I'll ask Ian and then Zara. Sige, Doc Melbs, Dr. Melba, new practices.
Siguro yung learning what technology can and cannot do. Importante yun for all organizations and churches as well. Na-discover natin na we can expand, no? Yung massify yung reach natin through technology. Kagaya ngayon ito, we used to just do person-to-person na mga training. Pero sabi ko, dahil pandemic, let's just do Zoom, no? Now, so merong gift side yung technology. But at the same time, sabi nga ni Sarah, dapat merong discernment and intentionality. We must make the technology work for us. Hindi yung we become enslaved and addicted to it. Yung ganon. And I think it's very important na we have to be prepared to be disciplined and have sensory deprivation kung kailangan. Naalala ko yung sabi sa scripture, no? If your eye causes you to sin, you pluck it out. If your hand causes you to sin, you cut it off. Anong ibig sabihin nun? It's a very radical self-deprivation. Wala ka ng eyes. You know, things that you see, things you do with your hands, mga activity mo, if it makes you sin, cut it off. In other words, merong place for sensory deprivation. Naalala ko yan dahil I begin to realize ang dami kong oras para sa Netflix, no? Even if totoo na, you know, I mean, I'm very creative, so I like to say, ay, gusto ko yata yan, gawa tayo ng film, ganon. But, it's important na, yung sabi ni Sarah, yung intentionality, yung clarity about what technology can and cannot do. Itong mga hybrid, anong pwedeng gawin dyan? Since technology is also a gift. But at the same time, it can really be a distraction, sabi nga ni Sarah. So, kailangan yung discernment, kahit sa mga churches. Yung sinasabi ni Ian about relationships, walang substitute dun eh. And technology cannot substitute for that, you know. Merong old na advertisement nun, you cannot fax a handshake. And you cannot, hug a person who is in grief by technology. No? Marami namatay these days. And in fact, one of our volunteer staff, kamamatay lang kagabi. And I feel very sad about it, And I wish I was there to just, hold her hand or whatever. Pero it was not possible dahil nga pandemic daw. But, these are the things, human personal things na dapat wag nating kalimutan. Yung personal touch of another human being. Napaka-importante nun. And I think primary yun dapat sa mga church communities.
Thank you, Dr. Melba. How about you, Ian? In the area of our expression of faith or the church, what practices should we welcome?
I think, yeah, we should. One of the things that came to mind is we need to think of yung technology is not. We shouldn't be enslaved by technology. We should be able to use it. It's good things for what the Lord has called us to do. And that's the same for a lot of things, no? For our buildings and our structures and our laptops and our phones. So it goes in all directions, no? The things that we shop, These structures can shape us, and we should not allow these things to be our gods, no, to be our idols. And so when it comes to technology, tama yon. We talk about what are the things that technology can and cannot do for us. But at the same time, we also do that in our real life context, yung physical context. What can the physical context can do and cannot do that technology can help us with. So lahat yan i-engage mo yung mga yung mga questions na to. These are structures and systems. And so babalik tayo doon na I think systems are very contextual also. So it depends on where you are, what your office is or doing, what is your church, where is your church? If it's in an urban poor context, it's in a rural context. I just came from a training recently. That was last year pala, late last year, and we were doing a training for a ministerial fellowship up north in Zambales, and a lot of the pastors came from the mountains. So what they were asking for us are printed handouts because they could not bring the PowerPoint sa bundok. Wala na silang magagawa. Wala naman silang computer doon or wala silang cloud drive doon na ma-access because wala silang internet doon. So iba yung konteksto nila. So it depends on your community, your local needs, your issues that are present. There is no single way of doing things. These things can go both ways, both evil or for good. There are house churches, insider movements, iba-ibang ano yan. Merong but my recommendation is to engage yung mga sistemang to. You ask questions. Is this really something that will be helpful for me? Is this system biblical? Or the systems that we hold on to, have they become unnecessary? Or have they become a burden or an idol to me or to our community? So sa Bible sabi, 'di ba, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, no longer conforming to the patterns or to the systems of this world. So you ask, is this system looking more like the world or looking more like a business franchise or a toxic relationship? Yan yung mga sistema natin, ano. Let us engage yung systems na to and ask, is this transforming our communities for the good, so that or for our society to look more like the kingdom, or is it just becoming a burden that is tying me up or bringing me back to Egypt as a slave, no?
Right. Wow. Very important questions that I'd like to encourage everyone to think about. Tini Zara, in the area of the self or on a personal level, what new practices would you advise us to welcome in our lives?
Okay, well, I was thinking that contexts will always change, but there are three things that I realized or I crystallized for me during the pandemic. It was consciousness, community, and commission. Now, just briefly, the consciousness is the willingness to examine and be corrected. No, for community naman, not community that you join so that you can get out of, but as what Pastor Ian was saying, that genuine community where you are able to die to yourself also and bear one another's burdens. And I think that that is the community that actually will be able to receive blessings and be a blessing to others. So nothing ingrown. And commission. So by commission, I mean essentially, like an instruction or command, or essentially your purpose. And all of these things, these three things I see come together, or I think will survive any context if they are centered, or if the center of these things is the Lord. Because if the Lord is the one allowing you or using His word to examine yourself, your heart, if the Lord is the one that brings you into community of fellow believers, and you are able to see and meet the needs of others outside of that community, and if it is the Lord who has commissioned you to fulfill His great commission, then He will be the one also to equip you and to go before you in the work that you will do. And so, regardless of the context, regardless of the old wineskins, the wine is always new, and we are always becoming renewed. And so, essentially, the term reinventing ourselves, we cannot really do without the new wine, which is, we acknowledge, is God and His gospel. So I think those are the three things that I hope others would find helpful to embrace.
Certainly. Thank you for sharing that. Would you agree with me, to our listeners? It's more than just a tip, like what I said earlier, but it's really an encouragement for us. And God promised He will always be with us, right? So the newness will always be upon us, but it only takes that consciousness for us to, be able to realize it, and for us to be able to walk through it. Wow, this is such
Yes.
a rich discussion. Unfortunately, we can't have the whole night, but we certainly would appreciate if our friends joining us could continue to give their comments, join the discussion. We may not be able to read all of your comments, pero masaya tayo na, like we said, technology allows us to be able to interact even after this live, 'di ba? Pwede pa rin natin 'tong mapanood, pwede pa rin nating mabasa yung mga comments ninyo, and we can join in the reflection together, 'di ba? Ang ganda na, sabi nga kanina ni Dr. Melba and also ni Ian, we have to know how technology can work for us. So please don't be shy to put in there your comments, your takeaways maybe, your reactions to the things that were shared by Dr. Melba, Pastor Ian, and Attorney Zara. Thank you so much for sharing from your own personal experiences. Nakarelate ba kayo doon? Ako nakarelate ako dun sa marami sa mga sinabi nila. So marami akong naging takeaways dito. Thank you once again for joining, spearheading our discussion. Dr. Melba, Pastor Ian, and Attorney Zara, and to all of us who are watching, maybe I could just give some, highlights. Marami dyan, but these are just my personal takeaways, no? We were talking about reinventing the self, and we've delved and we started to ground ourselves with new wineskin. So, like what we've said, we have to fit in the times. So, what I also appreciated was that the wineskin may become old, but the wine will always be new. There will always be the new wine upon us. But the challenge also stuck with me. Are we going back to the old normal? At tinatawag lang ba natin itong new normal? Or are we really pushing through to really experience the newness that God would want us to experience? So it's a challenge for all of us. I'm sure, even for Dr. Melba, Pastor Ian, and Zara, like they said, sa inyo rin na kasama natin ngayon, it may be a challenge for us, but one of the things that was mentioned also was that we should not just react to the times, but we should be intentional. It takes, a constant realization and awareness, consciousness, sabi nga, kung ano yung context na meron tayo. But what I also appreciated is we may have different context. So my context may be different from yours. But what's important is, bawat isa sa atin may consciousness kung nasan tayo ngayon. And at the end of the day, we trust God is sovereign. We trust that God would lead us to the new wineskin, to the newness of the season for you, for me, for our organization, for our churches, personally. So again, this is a conversation. that we'd like everyone to join in so that you too can reflect, you too can pray, you too can ask the Lord, Lord, ano bang new wineskin for me? How will you want me to reinvent the self, my organization, my church, the church you've entrusted to me, so that we can continue to really do the mission. And sabi rin kanina, the mission remains the same, and that is the gospel witness of Jesus, the Lord. So, Attorney Zara, Ian, Dr. Melba, once again, maraming salamat. Salamat sa mga sumama sa ating discussion ngayon. You know, you can catch not just the replay of this conversation, but next week, next Thursday, we will be releasing the podcast version of this conversation. So if you are driving to work or from work, pabalik sa mga bahay nyo, kung saan man, mapapakinggan nyo po yung conversation natin in a podcast format. So I'd like to invite you to watch out for that. Our podcast of ISIP ISAK, Conversations on Faith and Society. We will launch it here in our Facebook. Please share it to your friends, to your family, to everyone whom you think would appreciate this conversation at marami rin silang matututunan. At inaayayahan na rin po namin kayo sa susunod na pagkikwentuhan natin dito sa ISIP ISAK. That would be on February 2. Abangan niyo po yan dahil papasok na tayo sa bagong buwan. So baka new wineskin na naman. Hindi, pero bagong topic tayo dyan sa February 2. We will be talking about martial law through the eyes of a child. We will be hearing stories from people who experienced or who had stories to share to us, interesting stories during the time of martial law. So please do join us on February 2. And once again, our podcast next Thursday will be released here in our Facebook page. So thank you. We had a bit of an overtime, but this is our first episode of ISIP ISAK at masaya kami na nakasama kayong lahat. Samahan niyo po kami sa susunod na conversation at we are looking forward that many and new friends will join us in ISIP ISAK 2023, brought to you by the Institute of Studies for Asian Church and Culture. Maraming salamat at kita-kita tayong muli. God bless everyone!